Hello everyone, this is the Casual Fan. The Imola Grand Prix is right around the corner, and while for the last two races I've done a preview of the race, this time around I thought maybe switch it up a little, and for a change let's jump off the fence and make some bold predictions for the race. Now currently we have the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc leading the way after 3 races. He leads the championship from George Russell, but if you ask me, the gap that needs to be focused on is the gap between him and Max Verstappen. A gap of 46 points right now. Charles Leclerc can literally binge on alcohol, miss the race in Imola, and still have a more than 20-point lead in the championship. Just let that sink in. That is the kind of deficit that Max Verstappen is looking at right now. Speaking of Imola, on the other hand, we have the sprint race format this weekend, and to add to that, there seems to be a very strong possibility of rain across all the 3 days. Will it play a role during the weekend? Well, I don't know. I'm not the weather guy. But if it does, it surely would make things more fun. Having said that, let's get off the fence this time around and jump straight to the predictions for the Imola Grand Prix. Okay, I know this is not the most concrete prediction for the weekend, but please just hear me out. Why have I picked Max Verstappen to win in the wet weather and Leclerc to win in the dry? Well, the reasoning is simple. I feel Ferrari will be the better car in Imola. While the fast-flowing first sector works to Red Bull's advantage and should help the team, overall if you look at the lap, there are enough slow-speed sections where Ferrari can make up time and even pull away. Because of this, if the weekend stays dry, especially looking at the track characteristics, I do expect Ferrari and Leclerc especially to hold an advantage over Verstappen and pick up his 3rd win of the season. However, on the other hand, if it is wet and we have rain causing disruptions, I do feel things are going to get mixed up. Now, while this is not a dig at Leclerc, up until now in the respective careers, we have seen that Max is probably the gold standard of driving when it comes to driving in the wet weather on the current grid. Even last season, while Mercedes held an advantage over Red Bull on pace at Imola, Max was able to beat Lewis Hamilton, a master of rain himself, at this very track. Because of this, if we have rain, I feel Max Verstappen will win the Imola Grand Prix. Now, a lot has been said about the goody two-shoe nature of the battle between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. The two drivers have given each other space. They have kept it clean, and more often than not, neither driver has tried to push the boundaries. For Max, at the start of the season, this made sense. He didn't know how good the car was, and he didn't want to get involved in a ridiculous accident and compromise his race. Right now, with 3 races out of the way, the roles have changed. Charles has 75 points in the bag, while Max has just 25 points to his name. Although it's just 3 races, this changes the mindset of both the drivers. Or should I actually say that it should change the mindset of both the drivers. Now, Charles cannot afford to have an incident in the race. He has to score maximum possible points, and at the same time he has to make sure he does not compromise his race by getting involved in an accident. On the other hand, Max has nothing to lose right now. With a 46-point deficit, he is pretty much out of contention, and right now, if he has to do a bit of argy-bargy to get ahead of Leclerc, he will go for it, because now, if something goes wrong, Leclerc is the one who will face the bigger consequences. For the Imola Grand Prix, say goodbye to the friendly Max Verstappen, who was far too accommodating to Leclerc the first couple of races, as the aggressive Max Verstappen is going to make a return. Now, does this mean that he's going to crash into Leclerc? No, he's not. And it doesn't mean he's going to do something off the rule book. What it means, however, is that Max is probably going to take the aggressiveness of his driving up a notch, and we might see an increase in intensity from his side this weekend. Now, if there was one nemesis that Fernando Alonso has had this season, then it is reliability. He struggled with tire wear in the first race of the season and was thoroughly beaten by Esteban Ocon. However, in the second and third race of the season, the Spaniard has been back to his best. He was on course for a top 6 finish in Saudi Arabia before his car gave up and shut down. He was on course for a top 4 qualifying performance in the Australian Grand Prix before the hydraulics issue on his car completely wrecked his weekend. The Spaniard has 2 points to show from his first 3 races this season. Compare that to the 20 points scored by Esteban Ocon, his teammate, and you can recognize a complete contrast in fortunes. The thing is, when you talk about Alonso, you talk about a driver that embodies the samurai spirit. You talk about a driver that has a tendency of bouncing back even harder after a bad weekend. Alonso will be angry, dejected, and even disappointed after the first 3 races. But what this only does is it riles him up even further for a better performance at the next race. With Alpine, Alonso has a car in which he can do some handy things. Solely on pace, is Alpine capable of finishing on the podium? The answer might be no in case of any regular driver. For Alonso, the answer is yes. He can take the Alpine to the podium, and if he does at the Imola Grand Prix, I would not be surprised one bit. In fact, I am predicting a surprise podium for Alonso this weekend. Well, if there is one team that has shown that a team can recover after stumbling at the start of the season, it's McLaren. The team was at best 8th fastest in Bahrain, and slowly but steadily in just 2 race weekends, it had Lando Norris qualifying in 4th position in Australia. On the other hand, a team that has shown the other side of the regulations where you can get stuck with a bad design, then that team is Mercedes. The team has pretty much stayed at the same place in the first 3 races. It was the 3rd fastest team in Bahrain, it was the 3rd fastest team in Saudi Arabia, it was the 3rd fastest team in Australia, and it will, in all probability, remain the 3rd fastest team in Imola as well. Sadly though, for the German team, the problem is not only its position in the pecking order, it's the relative gap to the front where there hasn't been a change. At Imola, the team has opted not to bring upgrades because of the congested nature of the weekend, and therefore expecting anything drastically different is out of the picture. On the other hand, McLaren has been cutting down the gap to the front at a rate that has been shocking to observe. The team was snapping at the heels of Mercedes in Australia. Comparing the static nature of Mercedes' performance this season to the positive improvement graph of McLaren, should it really be a surprise to see McLaren leapfrog Mercedes? Ideally, it shouldn't be, but after years of dominance, it would be a novelty to see Mercedes losing fair and square to a customer team. Okay, now this is not a dig at the new regulations. I do feel that these regulations are a step in the right direction. However, this is probably a dig at what I would call a rather questionable choice to have the sprint race format at a track like Imola. Not that I don't like Imola. I've loved the track ever since I started following F1. However, if you want to showcase your new product, you should showcase it in the environment where the product can actually shine. A sprint race is a 100-kilometer race which is introduced with the purpose of having an additional factor of entertainment for the fans during the weekend. Is Imola a track that we expect to excel when it comes to wheel-to-wheel action? The answer is no. That is just not the case. Imola is not the track that any fan would pick if he wants to see wheel-to-wheel action. Even if we have the new rules in place, you will not see too much wheel-to-wheel action between the cars under normal conditions. After what happened in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, fans have developed a skewed perception of the new regulations. Have these regulations helped with the overtakes in the race? The answer is yes, they have. But they are surely not potent enough on tracks that are just not conducive for wheel-to-wheel action. We just saw in Australia how ineffective even the DRS was. If it is a normal race weekend, it would be more or less on the same lines or probably worse, because Imola is not even comparable to Australia in terms of wheel-to-wheel action. So what do we end up with this weekend? We end up with a qualifying session on Friday that should be very interesting. But after that, we have a 100-kilometer procession on Saturday with not too much action or overtakes. Then on Sunday, we have a 300-kilometer procession in which the factors of variability will be the pit stops and the tire choices the drivers make. Now, to be fair, the sprint race format is a good addition, and they have made it more rewarding by adding points until the 8th position. But Imola is just not the race to implement that, and we could be looking at some criticism coming its way for its inability to do what it was always supposed to do. So these are my bold predictions. What do you guys think? Do let me know in the comment section. Please like, share and subscribe. I really hope you guys liked the slightly different approach I used this time around. Thanks for watching and see you next time.